Well, good evening, my friends. I hope this video finds you well, wherever you may be, whatever you may be doing. Lucy says hi too. She's over there on the sidelines. Aren't you, Lucy? What are you saying? She's wondering what I'm talking to, who I'm talking to. I would imagine a dog has a difficult time with the concept of a camera, but she's the best dog. Best dog in the world. All dog owners know that dogs are the greatest. Just like all cat owners know all cats are the greatest. I have both, and they're all great. I'm sitting here on a Friday evening. I just recently got back from the store with my son. We went to pick up some food for the dog and some juice, got a little bit of ice cream, and we were talking about life in general and the meaning behind it all, if you will. Kids are pretty intuitive. I'm sure we all know that. Anyone who spends time around kids knows kids say the damnedest things. It's not that they're ignorant, it's that we are. We've really lost touch with that childlike wonder, that ability to just go, wow, what is this all about? And we can become very petrified and calcified as we age, and we can often become stubborn and find ourselves kind of trapped in our own heads. Daily circumstances, bills, family. It's a lot of work. Everything we do takes a lot of effort. And sometimes we sit back and say, what's it all for? And that's natural. But when you realize that the work is what life's all about, then the real work begins. These things, these ideas, they can pop into your head at any time in life. They kind of like go on and off. You know, maybe when you're really young, you have some inspiration to play guitar for a while, and then you're an artist for a while. And then as the school system kind of sucks you in, siphons you into this, one-track mind, you realize that, well, if I'm going to make it in this world, I've got to fit in. Got to do what other people are doing, and you do have to play the game. You're a victim of circumstance, unfortunately. You're on this planet, regardless of who you are, what you believe, where you're at. You have to deal with the community, local, extended, as well as the world at this point, and we have to depend on each other. And as many of you can clearly see, that's probably not working out very well for the world. Although a lot of people have been brought out of what we would call, quote, poverty. I think that there's this failure to understand that poverty doesn't necessarily mean unhappiness. And there are definitely places in the world where people are starving, where people need food, they need assistance, they need guidance, they need shelter. But humans are pretty damn resourceful, and we do a good job taking care of each other. With most of the areas today where people are actually starving, for example, in fact, everywhere in the world where people are starving right now is man-made. Has nothing to do with the climate, has nothing to do with the earth. We're not saving each other. We're creating war zones where people can't even go and feed each other because there are no-go zones or places where you're not allowed to feed, or blockades of aid to countries. Which, it's unfortunate. We as people can speak up about it, but the most powerful people seldom do. So it's up to the little guy, and the little guy gets drowned out by the noise. What's important is to stay true to your principles no matter what happens to you. No matter what happens to you. There's no exception. We all make little mistakes. We all do things we're not supposed to do. I put some sugar in my coffee. Okay, I know I shouldn't be drinking sugar, but you know, it tastes so good. But be aware of when your actions affect other people in a negative way. And I think if we all look out for each other that way, to say, you know, hey, if I choose to speed down the freeway, that's my free right. If I choose to speed down the freeway putting other people in danger, that's not my right. You see, there's a difference. When we inconvenience other people or harm other people purposefully, I think that that's, you know, let's just say that's something we should always try to avoid, unless it is absolutely necessary, such as in protecting oneself for self-defense, in which case, this is why I'm never a pacifist. I'm a realist. I prefer to live by the shield, but I will die by the sword. If somebody threatens my family, I would do whatever I had to do to protect them, or my loved ones, because there are people on this planet that do mean harm to others, and that's definitely true. But when we're young, even though we tend to be selfish, that's more often taught than we realize. It's when children are taught that there's plenty, there's not a lot of thievery and meanness that goes on. Of course, young cubs, young pups, they get smacked around by their mamas because, you know, they're playing too rough. They've got to learn the ropes. This is life. We have to be taught. But humans are pretty damn wise. By the time a kid's, 10 years, 12 years old these days, he's pretty damn well, pretty good in his head. Most of the kids I've met that are 12-year-olds are pretty smart, a hell of a lot smarter than most of the adults I meet these days. So we have a whole new generation coming up in an era where they see the world differently than we did. And to relate to that, I think people need to find their inner child and to remember what it was like to be young, and also acknowledge that the youth of today do not have all of the same benefits, even if those benefits were ignorant. In other words, promises that we never got. My generation, Gen X, the latchkey kids, we were the come home, your parents are at work generation, play Nintendo. Atari, if you had one. The rich kid in the neighborhood usually had an Atari, but let's just say I've seen a lot, and I'm not even that old. People who are far older than I, with so much more wisdom than I, have seen so much more. And I can imagine how frustrating it is to be a wise elder watching other people that are in your own age group, people who have spent decades upon decades living in this world, who still think that what's important is money and power. It makes you think about good and evil sometimes, but I don't see it that way. It's not good and evil. Polarity is everything. Anything that you would consider to be good has to have an opposite. It's just how everything works. It's the law of the universe, Everything has an opposite. But is it necessary? In other words, with all the turmoil in the world, the death, poverty, starvation, anger, hatred, wars, are these things necessary? Are they inevitable? Or can we really have a utopia, a golden age on Earth, where everybody lives in harmony? I didn't used to think that a utopia was possible. But the more I've been learning about brains and the way that brain waves can be synchronized for a positive life, the more I realize, even within shamanic drumming, for example, they've used MRI scans to show that shamanic drummers, they synchronize their brain, their brain cells the same way that somebody who, say, has a psychedelic experience does. And this allows them to commune with God, nature, the world. And as I mentioned in a previous video, that's two ways to look at this. Either A, you can talk to God, or B, you are completely crazy. And in today's society, you're deemed crazy. But I would refer people back to Carl Gustav Jung, who, back in the 1920s and 30s, who just, he was introduced to me at just the right time in my life when I needed to understand. Because he was a psychologist. He was a doctor. He was a professional who also had seen ghosts, had talked to spirits and gods, and went through these tribulations and tried to express them through coining the term synchronicity and writing about his experiences. The Red Book is a phenomenal read for anybody. There's an audiobook version on Spotify. Highly recommended. Listen to it with your eyes closed and headphones in the dark. And the thing is, these things really have to be processed. You have to meditate on them. You can't just expect that in this busy day-to-day life you can find some sort of truth. It doesn't happen when there's so much noise. You have to purposefully set aside time. You have to quiet your mind and say, I have an intention to do A, B, or C, whatever it may be. And if your intention is to remember what it was like to be a kid, to remember what it was like to be free, and to forget about the world's problems, not make them your own, while still being able to help others that need your help, the first step is to go into your inner space. While the world's concerned with politics and a bunch of women flying up in a penis-shaped capsule into the atmosphere to call themselves astronauts, while there's wars going and people starving, it's almost the ultimate paradox of absurdity that we're living in right now. But to set all that aside and forget about outer space, go into inner space, find your inner space, because if you can connect with your own subconscious, you can connect with everything. And at that point, the real work begins. So we're all on this journey together. And if you've watched this to this point, I'm going to assume that you were meant to. If you didn't click off it, then it's probably something you needed to hear. That's the way I see the universe. So many teachings have come to me at the right time, and I've heard these stories so many times. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Okay, fine, whatever. No, it really happens. And when it does happen, you can look back and reflect and say, oh, this has been happening my whole fucking life, and I haven't been paying attention. We are directed by higher forces, whether we want to know it or not. And we can be in denial about that, but to come to terms with it is one of the most freeing feelings you will ever have in your life. So if you're a seeker, a fellow seeker out there who's been on your path, keep searching and you will understand. All those strange symbols, ideas, texts, languages, names, words, Hebrew, all this ancient history, it just all starts to make so much sense when you finally get it. And I welcome you all to the fold when you get there. And I hope that we all can actually improve this world by raising together and being a better people, because there's no room for bullshit. We got a lot of work to do. I would say even a person who doesn't believe in any of that should still want to be a good person, to do the right thing, to be kind, to help others, to not be selfish, to live modestly. These are just normal things that have been shown to make people happier. So if the byproduct is it makes you a better person, why not? See what happens. Sometimes it's hard to try. It is a beautiful evening. I'm so grateful to be here. I hope you are too. Talk to you next time. Peace out.